You know that feeling when you grasp something complex, when suddenly the pieces just click into place? It's that sort of aha moment, right? That feeling of really understanding something new.
Yeah, definitely.
But what if the very tools we use for that understanding, I mean, our language, our thoughts, what if they're actually, maybe surprisingly, the source of some of our biggest confusions, some real philosophical head scratchers?
Well, that's exactly what we're diving into today. We're going deep into some really fascinating and often quite counterintuitive insights from Ludwig Wittgenstein's Brown Book.
Okay.
And this isn't just about, grammar rules or sentence structure, not the usual stuff. Our mission today is really to peel back the layers of how we think language works, how we learn it, how we compare things, how we know things, even how we feel things,
Hmm.
and hopefully reveal a kind of surprising reality underneath all our everyday assumptions. We're aiming to turn these dense philosophical points into clear, maybe illuminating aha moments for you, to sort of shift how you look at the words you use every single day.
Right. And to do that, we'll be drawing, I understand, from a collection of his notes and dictations, where he explores these things he calls language games.
Exactly. Language game, they're like simple, sometimes imaginary scenarios, little thought experiments, really.
Okay.
And they help us see how meaning and understanding and even our most basic concepts actually operate in our lives.
Hmm.
They make us pause and question what we normally just take for granted.
So, what does all this mean for how you navigate your daily world? How you talk to people, how you understand yourself? Let's try and unpack this. So, when we first think about learning language, I mean, how we learned it or how kids learn it,
Hmm.
we often start with a really intuitive idea. It's the one Augustine talked about centuries ago, right?
Hmm. The Augustinian picture.
Yeah, that learning language is basically just learning the names of things. Man, sugar, table, tree. You point, you say the word, the kid gets it. It feels so obvious, doesn't it? Like teaching a toddler ball.
It does feel natural. And what's fascinating is, while it seems right for simple nouns like that, Wittgenstein argues it's a fundamentally incomplete picture.
Incomplete how?
Well, Augustine's view captures part of language learning, sure, but it describes a much, much simpler language than the complex reality of how we actually communicate.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like trying to explain chess without ever mentioning the pawns.
Ah.
You can describe kings, queens, bishops moving around. You describe a game, but not the whole game of chess, with pawn structures and end games and all that complexity.
Right, you miss a huge part of it.
Exactly. Augustine gives us a piece, but not the whole system. And in doing that, he might actually mislead us about the very nature of language.
Okay, so to challenge that simple naming idea, let's get into Wittgenstein's first language game.
Yeah.
You mentioned these thought experiments. What's the first one like?
Right. So imagine a really simplified society. Just two people. A builder, A, and his helper, B.
Okay.
B's only job is to bring A building stones. And there are only four types: cubes, bricks, slabs, and columns. Now, the entire language in this society consists only of those four words.
Yeah.
Cube, brick, slab, column. A calls out one word. B brings the right stone. That's it. No hello, no how are you, no asking questions. Just commands for stones.
That's very basic.
Extremely basic. And the immediate question is, well, how does a child learn this language?
Right.
Wittgenstein says it's mainly through training. Almost like training an animal, in a way.
Training, not teaching.
Yeah, he emphasizes training. It's not about explaining abstract rules. It's practical, hands-on. Repeated exposure, examples, maybe rewards for getting it right, or just the task not getting done if it's wrong, sort of implied correction.
And pointing.
Crucially, yes, demonstrative teaching. The adult points to a brick, gets the child's attention on it, and says the word brick. The child is trained not just to fetch when they hear the word, but also to say the word when the teacher points. It's all about embedding a specific behavior within a practice.
Okay, but let's dig into that word brick. When the builder shouts it in this game, is it just shorthand? Like, is it really meaning bring me a brick? Or does it just mean brick in that context? Because, in our language, brick can be lots of things.
This is absolutely central. This is one of Wittgenstein's big insights. We speakers of complex languages, we tend to just assume that meaning is some private mental thing, an internal state, an image, a feeling that goes along with the word.
Right, the idea in your head.
Exactly. We think brick has this mental essence. But Wittgenstein really challenges that. He shows us that the meaning of a sign, a word, a gesture, whatever, is fundamentally its role or its use within a specific language system, a specific game.
So it's about what it does.
Precisely. Now, sure, mental experiences might happen. Maybe you get a faint feeling or an image when you hear a brick, like William James noted for words like and or if. But Wittgenstein argues these internal things are usually caused by our use of the sign in the game. They aren't the meaning itself. And crucially, they don't always happen. If you're fluent, you don't consciously picture a brick every single time. The real meaning, the function, isn't hidden inside your head. It's out there in the practice of using the word. So brick means brick in that game because its role is clear and complete within that builder's limited system. It is the order.
That really flips the script on thinking every word is just a label for an idea or a thing. It's about the action, the function. Okay, so if that's the foundation, how does he build on it? Let's expand the game. Our builder's helper, B, knows the stones. What's next?
Okay, language game 2. Let's add quantity. B now learns the numerals 1 to 10. He learns them by heart in sequence. Now when A orders 5 slabs,
Yeah.
B counts out 5 slabs and brings them.
Right. So what's different here compared to learning slab?
What's subtly, but really importantly different is the way they're learned. Learning the number series by heart, memorizing the sequence is key. That's different from learning cube or brick by just pointing. This immediately tells us that numerals are a totally different kind of instrument in the language. When you teach 3 by pointing, say, at 3 bricks, that concept now applies to collections 3 slabs, 3 columns. The way you use the pointing gesture is different for quantity than for a type of object.
Ah, I see. Pointing at a brick versus pointing at 3 bricks involves a different kind of attention, a different action.
Exactly. And that difference only really becomes clear when you look at the whole language game in action, not just trying to define 3 in a vacuum. The meaning of 3 isn't some abstract threeness, it's how it enables the action of counting out 5 slabs.
Okay, that makes sense. What about unique items? Like not just any column, but that specific column. Proper names?
Yep, language game 3. We introduce a proper name for one particular building stone. Maybe it's got a unique crack. A points to that specific column and names it, say, Fido.
Fido the column.
Okay, so now if A calls out Fido, B brings that specific object.
And the learning process is pointing at Fido different from pointing at a brick. Mentally, I mean.
Well, Wittgenstein argues the difference isn't in some special internal mental act, some unique, proper name-meaning feeling. The difference is entirely in the role that pointing gesture plays in the whole training and communication practice.
How so?
Think about pointing at a blue jersey. How is pointing to its color different from pointing to its shape? We'd instinctively say we mean something different.
Right.
But try to isolate a distinct mental event that always happens when you mean color versus shape. You probably can't. The difference, Wittgenstein says, isn't in the pointing itself, but in the surrounding of that act, in the use of the language. The context, the established practice, what happens next. It shows how flexible our concept of naming really is.
Okay, wow. It's always coming back to the use, the activity, the context, not some fixed internal label. So what about phrases or words like here or there? Like in language game 4, if A says this slab or plate there while pointing, is there taught like brick?
It's a bit tricky, yes and no. When someone learns to use there, the teacher definitely points and says the word. But we shouldn't think this just gives a place the name there.
Ah, okay.
The key insight is that the pointing gesture here is part of the communication itself. It's integral to the command plate there. It's not a separate act of naming a location called there.
So the pointing completes the meaning of there in that utterance.
Exactly. Which contrasts with some philosophical views, like Bertrand Russell's idea that words like this or here are the real proper names for fundamental bits of reality. Wittgenstein pulls it back to ordinary life. Our concept of a proper name, like for that specific stone, Fido, is the relevant one. And this, he suggests, touches on how fuzzy concepts like exactness are in language. We're usually dealing with rough approximations that work perfectly well for our purposes.
It feels like every addition makes the language more complex, but also highlights this core idea of function. Okay, then there's language game 5. A asks how many plates, B counts, answers with the number. Simple question answer.
Yes. And these scenarios, games 1 through 5, and others, he describes, these are the language games. And here's a crucial point he makes. They are not incomplete fragments of language.
They're complete systems, even the builder one.
Yes, they are complete systems of human communication in themselves. Think about it. The builder's commands, the counting game, they are entire, functional languages for their specific purpose. He suggests children learn their native language through games like these.
Mm.
And imagining such a simple language as the entire communication system of, say, a primitive tribe helps us grasp this. When we learn technical languages, charts, diagrams, chemical symbols, we're essentially learning more distinct language games.
So our everyday language is like?
He calls it a nebulous mass, vast and maybe ill-defined, surrounded by these more clear-cut, discrete language games, which are the technical ones. It helps us see the function of language differently.
That's a really helpful framework. Okay, so within these systems, how do we introduce totally new words? Like in Language Game 6, say they need an arch. B points to 1, asks, what is this? A says this is an arch. Later, A calls arch, B brings it. That's defining by pointing ostensive definition.
Right. And this whole idea of naming things, names of numbers, names of colors is interesting. Where does that come from? Wittgenstein suggests two possibilities. One, we might mistakenly think the functions of proper names, like Jack, numerals 3, and color words, are way more similar than they actually are. We just lump them all under names.
Okay, oversimplifying.
Or two, maybe it comes from a deep, perhaps unconscious realization that their functions are fundamentally different. We see how different table is from Jack, and how different both are from red or east. And because they're so different, we have no reason not to call them all names, not because they're all the same kind of thing, but precisely to stress the lack of analogy between them. It's about how they function relative to each other, not a universal naming principle.
That's subtle. So the label name might highlight difference as much as similarity. What about written language? We've been talking speech. Language Game 7 has B using a table, right? Written signs next to pictures.
Yeah. A writes a sign, B finds it on the table, follows a line maybe to the picture of a chair, and fetches the chair, moving from sound to symbol.
So now we can talk about sentences and words more formally.
Exactly. For Wittgenstein, a sentence is just any complete sign in a language game, a full communication, and words are its parts. So back in Game 1, brick is a sentence. It's complete.
A one-word sentence.
Yes. In Game 2, 5 slabs is a sentence with 2 words. We decide if something's an order, a question, an explanation based entirely on its role in the game, not its grammatical structure in the abstract.
Yeah, okay, roll again. Now, what about word order? That adds another layer. In Language Game 8, if A says slab, column, brick, and B just brings all 3 at once, maybe it's 3 separate sentences. Or one list.
It's ambiguous, maybe. But then in Game 9, the order of the words tells B the order to bring them. First slab, then column, then brick. Now, it's clearly one proposition with 3 words, and the order is functional.
Right, and if the command was slab, then column, then brick. That's different again.
Yeah, now you have words like then, doing the job that order did before, and we start seeing groups of words with similar functions, what we call parts of speech. But this highlights the infinite variety of the functions of words. It's way more complex than simple grammar rules often suggest.
It really makes you question those neat categories. Could we even imagine a reason not to classify 1 with 2, 3? It seems so obvious it's a numeral.
We could. Imagine Language Game 11. It's like Game 2, but instead of 1 slab, they just call slab, meaning bring one. 1 is implied, other numbers are explicit. 2 slabs, 3 slabs.
Okay.
Now, someone used to this game, where slab means 1, might meet our language and refuse to classify 1 with the other numerals. For them, slab is the 1-unit command. 1 seems weird, redundant.
Huh. Like asking if black and white are colors.
Exactly. Or are chess pawns officers? It depends entirely on the custom and usage within the specific game or context. Classification isn't about some inherent property. It's about how we use the terms.
Use. Okay, so we have words, gestures, pictures. In Game 7, the pictures were called patterns. What's the difference between a word and a pattern here?
It's not a strict logical division, more a way to highlight different kinds of tools. We call 1, 2, 3 words. But if we use dashes, like ek for quantities, we might call those patterns.
Because they visually represent the quantity.
Right. But the same thing could be a word or a pattern, depending on the game. A circle could be the name for an ellipse in one game, or a pattern to compare an ellipse against in another. The difference isn't in the sign itself, but its function.
And when we use a pattern, we compare something with it, like matching a color sample. But what is comparing? What's going on inside? Is it one specific mental event?
No, this gets really interesting, and it's a huge source of confusion in philosophy. Look at Language Game 14. B has to fetch material from memory after seeing a sample. What might happen inside his head?
Okay.
Well, 14a Maybe he has a clear mental image of the sample guiding him.
Right, that seems plausible.
14b, maybe no clear image, just a feeling of tension that relaxes when he finds the right one.
Bit vaguer.
And then 14cb just goes to the shelf, looks around, maybe counts along, and takes the fifth one. No specific image, no specific feeling he's aware of.
And we tend to think 14c is missing something essential, right? The act of comparing.
Exactly. We're inclined to look for that specific experience of comparing or recognizing. But Wittgenstein says if you actually scrutinize cases of comparing, you find a huge variety of activities and states of mind.
Like what?
Holding things together, looking back and forth, checking under different lights, talking to yourself, having memory images, feeling tension or satisfaction, all sorts of things in all sorts of combinations. There is no single mental experience that is the act of comparing.
So it's not one thing.
No. What connects all these cases is a vast number of overlapping similarities. He uses the famous analogy of a rope.
Ah, yes, family resemblances.
Exactly. The rope's strength doesn't come from one single fiber running the whole length, but from countless fibers overlapping. That's like our concepts comparing, game, understanding. They're held together by these overlapping similarities, not a hidden core essence. That's a massive aha moment.
It really is. It explains why defining things like art or justice is so hard. We're looking for the single fiber, but it's the whole weave. So back to 14 Savage, just picks the right bolt, no inner experience. How did he know? Why that one?
This brings up the difference between asking for a cause versus a reason. A cause. Maybe some unconscious brain process, something science could investigate.
Okay.
But a reason. Wittgenstein suggests, maybe controversially, there need not have been a reason for the choice.
No reason.
A reason is like a step before the choice. But why must every step have another step before it? We assume there must be a hidden mental step justifying it, but maybe there just isn't. The action in its context might be the whole story. The why might just be because he did.
It's unsettling almost. That actions can just be without that internal justification, we assume. Okay, let's take this to rules. What counts as a rule? Language game 33. B moves based on a table A gives him. A means right arrow, B left arrow. A orders A, C, B looks up the arrows, moves. The table is the rule.
Yes, in game 33, the table is the instrument, the explicit rule. But then he introduces variations. Game 36, B doesn't look at the table anymore. The letters just call up images of arrows by association. The mental picture guides him.
Okay, the rule is internalized as an image.
Game 37, B acts without any picture. He just responds directly to the letters with the right move, like touch typing.
Automatic response.
Game 38, the table was only used for training, then taken away. B just continues the pattern. In each case, the rule of the table plays a totally different role. Its function, even its status as a rule, changes depending on the practice.
So the rule isn't just the physical table. What if there's no table ever? Game 39. Training is just A, leading the pupil's hand, teaching by direct physical guidance.
Right, or even more fundamentally, game 40. There's just a natural urge to move a certain way when seeing the letters, like the letters themselves compel the movement.
A natural urge.
Well, Wittgenstein suggests this curious mental mechanism, this urge, is functionally no different from what training creates. Our reactions can become so ingrained they feel natural, unmediated. An observer might see this tribe and say they're following a rule, even if no one ever wrote it down or thinks about it. It's like a natural law describing their behavior, part of their natural history.
So our idea of a rule gets stretched really thin here. It's not always an explicit instruction. It can be a pattern, a habit, an ingrained response.
Exactly. Which leads us nicely to the word can, or being able to. How do we use that? Language game 44. People have a board with a peg in a circular slot. They say, this board can move in a circle. Or game 45. Instead of the book is in the drawer, they say the book can be taken out.
Okay, in those cases, can seems to describe a visible state. You see the slot, you see the book isn't blocked.
Right. It describes the state of the object or its environment. But then, game 46, people test sticks for hardness by trying to bend them. They say, this stick can be bent easily, meaning it's soft. Here, can describes a state softness, but it's defined by tests, not just by looking. You infer softness from how it behaves when you try to bend it.
You don't just see softness.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Or describing a person's build, game 47. He can run fast. You might say that even if he's injured right now and can't currently run, because his physique, his disposition, suggests that potential. So can isn't always about immediate possibility, but sometimes about potential or disposition based on tests or characteristics. It's all about the use of the sentence.
And this connects back to that William James idea, right? About expressions.
Yes. When we describe a tribe's language, saying they use making the test for throwing the boomerang instead of our word skipping. We rely on the whole role that activity plays in their life. Gestures, emotions, context. James's idea that maybe you're sad because you cry, not just crying because you're sad.
That the expression can be part of the state.
Precisely. The expressions aren't just outward signs. Sometimes they help constitute the state itself. The crying is part of the sadness, not just a symptom.
Mind-bending. Okay, so what about can as prediction? Language game 49. Some tribes only say he can do X if he has actually done X before. The chief asks, can so-and-so swim the river? Only guys who have done it say yes. No hypotheticals.
Right. So in that language, do he has done it and he can do it mean the same thing? If usage defines meaning, then no, they're different sentences used in specific ways. This connects to that philosophical idea what can happen must have happened before. Maybe it's just a rule about how that tribe uses can, not a deep truth about reality.
So it's a language rule, not metaphysics.
Could be. And phrases like, this gunpowder can blast this rock, game 60, or I shall be able to lift this weight, game 61, are clearly conjectures, predictions, related to can as state, but distinct. Wittgenstein deliberately set up those earlier can games, 46, 49, not to involve conjecture, to isolate that descriptive use.
Okay. Now let's get to the core illusion around being able to. Language game 62. A writes a number sequence like 1, 5, 11, 19, 29. B watches, tries to figure it out, then suddenly shouts, now I can go on. What just happened in B's head?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? Maybe he found the exact formula, like add 4, then 6, then 8, game 62.
Okay, explicit rule discovery.
Or maybe he just got a hazy sense of the pattern, not a precise formula, game 63.
A feeling for it.
Or maybe he just knew and started writing the next number, 41, without any conscious formula or feeling popping into his head, game 64.
And we're tempted to think there must be something behind it, right? Some hidden mental event.
Overwhelmingly tempted. We think B can continue the series must mean a formula came to mind or some special mental click happened. But Wittgenstein says finding the formula is just a symptom, a possible accompaniment. It's not the ability itself. We keep looking for this peculiar activity, process, or state called being able to go on, hidden inside.
Like looking inside the chair for the real meaning of chair.
Exactly. The word behind is just a metaphor. The reality, he suggests, is that we use the phrase being able to in different situations to make different distinctions. Sometimes it distinguishes knowing the formula from not knowing it. Sometimes it distinguishes knowing it but having forgotten how to write. Sometimes it's about feeling well versus feeling shell-shocked. There's no single consistent inner mechanism that is can.
So again, it's a family resemblance thing.
Absolutely. No single complete set of conditions defines can. It's a vast net of family likenesses, involving bits of conjecture, bits of describing states, bits of referring to tests past.
And our language pushes us towards thinking it's a state, like he is capable of.
Yes. That metaphor of being in a peculiar state, he can play chess, is deeply embedded in how we talk. It makes us imagine underlying hypothetical mechanisms in the mind or brain, even if we have zero idea what they are. It's like imagining a little Pinola mechanism inside someone to explain how they're guided by signs, when it's just a way of talking about their behavior. A useful simile, maybe, but not a description of an actual mental machine.
So if I say I can speak French, I'm not describing an internal French-speaking machine. I'm talking about a disposition, maybe based on past success or study or what others say. It's about the observed behavior and context, not some hidden engine.
That's the challenge. To shift from assuming the inner cause to looking at the outer practice and context. It really questions how we think about our own skills.
That distinction, behavior versus assumed inner state, seems crucial. Okay, let's apply it to reading. What exactly is reading? Is it always conscious? Think about a fluent reader versus a beginner.
Right. Wittgenstein argues reading doesn't necessarily involve one single, uniform, conscious mental act. A fluent reader's eyes just glide. Maybe they recognize whole words by shape, maybe parts of words. A beginner spells things out very deliberately.
Very different experiences.
Very. And we're tempted to say reading is a particular conscious mental act, and only you know if you're really reading or just pretending. But Wittgenstein asks, couldn't the conscious process of sounding out letters be the same for a beginner genuinely reading and one just pretending? We don't actually know the internal mechanisms that always define it. The real difference often lies in the external criteria we use.
Okay, so what are those external criteria? Let's say we're training reading machines, people, like in Language Game 67. If a student learning just accidentally says table when the word table appears, does the trainer say, aha, he's reading?
No way. The trainer says, nope, just an accident. It's only after the student consistently gets words right time after time, the teacher says, okay, now he can read.
So it's the pattern, the reliability.
Exactly. Asking, when did he really start reading?
Yeah.
Doesn't make much sense without some arbitrary cutoff point, like the first word of 100 correct ones. The change is in the general behavior, the overall pattern, not a single act or a sudden internal switch. The idea that a conscious mental act is the only real criterion is tempting, but flawed. Think about it. If a superfluent reader feels like they just know the sequence by heart because it's so automatic, 𝘽𝙧𝙤𝙤𝙠, are they not reading anymore? Or what about that strange case, 𝘽𝙧𝙤𝙤𝙠, of a man on drugs who reads non-existent letters as above E, using some consistent but imaginary alphabet only he knows? Would we say he's just imagining it? Or would we be more inclined to say, well, he is reading, according to his weird system?
Probably the latter because of the consistency.
Right. It pushes us beyond just the internal feeling to the function of the pattern. Okay, so if reading is defined by behavior, what about explaining it as deriving a copy from a model? Like learning Cyrillic sounds and then sounding out Russian words. That feels like clear derivation.
Yeah, you're building the pronunciation from the letter sound rules.
But what makes us say he derived it? Usually, it's because he can show the steps. Like in 𝘽𝙧𝙤𝙬𝙠, someone transcribing block letters to cursive using a conversion table. We see them looking at the table, maybe saying, okay, capital A becomes small a. The observable process is key.
The evidence of using the rule. Okay, but what if it gets weird? 𝘽𝙬𝙤_1, he transcribes A into B. 𝘽𝙬𝙤_2, A into N, just arbitrarily, is that deriving? Or 𝘽𝙬𝙤_3, he transcribes the first A to N, the next A to O, the next to P, following a simple shifting rule.
And here's where it gets really illuminating again. We tried to strip deriving down to its essence, removing the costume like the explicit table. But we find that what had seemed mere costumes were the essential features.
Like peeling an artichoke and finding nothing at the core.
Exactly. The essence wasn't a hidden core. It was in the vast number of overlapping similarities in how we use the word derive. Using terms like deriving, reading, being guided by symbols isn't about pointing to one inner process. It's about describing a range of examples with characteristic features. These examples aren't hints at something hidden. They are the descriptions of the behavior and context. There isn't one mechanism that is reading. It's a family of activities.
Wow. Okay, so if reading isn't one specific inner feeling, what about familiarity? Do we always have a distinct feeling of familiarity when we see, say, our own house? What's the opposite? Surprise?
Yeah, Wittgenstein notes that unfamiliarity is much more of an experience than familiarity. Something unfamiliar grabs your attention, but familiar things often just blend in. When B recognizes the pencil back in 𝘽𝙧𝙤𝙬𝙠, did he have a little aha pencil moment? Probably not. He just reacted in this particular way by saying this word.
So no single feeling again.
No. There are many different experiences, some are feelings, that we might group under familiarity. It's not one consistent sensation. Think about seeking a word in memory versus looking for a friend at a park. What's similar? Maybe just that at first we can't find it, then we can. We don't need to be aware of deep similarities to use the same phrase. The similarity might just be that we use the same phrase.
Language creates the connection.
Sometimes. And grammar tempts us to insert steps, like you must understand an order before you obey it. But is understanding always a separate mental event? If I teach you red by pointing, and you then correctly bring me red things, does that mean you first had to grasp what's common to all red things? What is common to light red and dark red, besides being called red? Often carrying out the order correctly is the criterion for understanding. The action shows it.
No need for a prior mental abstraction. Okay, so this family resemblance idea applies everywhere. If we use strain for both lifting weights and concentrating hard, is it because they share some core strainness?
That's the similarity trap. Saying they're similar doesn't mean they share a single common ingredient. It's just another way of saying we group them together, maybe because we apply the word strain to both, like calling light blue and dark blue both blue. Not because of some identical essence, but just because this is blue too.
And culture shapes this grouping.
Absolutely. If a culture called green and red patrician colors, social role, but had distinct names for light blue, Cambridge, and dark blue, Oxford, rivalry, asking what's common, we'd get answers reflecting usage, not just visual properties.
Okay. And we can stretch these analogies, right? Like applying darker, lighter from colors to vowels, U-O-A-E-I-S.
Yeah. Someone might arrange them U darkest to ilitis, but then say, well, U isn't really darker, but it gives a darker impression. We're so tempted to say he must have seen something common. But if he can't explain what it is, that must just shows our determination to interpret his behavior through our lens, not an observed fact about his inner state.
He just uses the word maybe with the same intonation or gesture.
Exactly. That's what's happening with deep sorrow, deep sound, Fat Tuesdays. We extend words based on resonance or analogy, not some shared objective core.
That's amazing. So many metaphors are baked into our descriptions. Okay, what about volition? Willing something. Lifting a heavy weight feels like a clear act of volition. Deliberation, effort.
Right, that's the full-fledged prototype. Muscular effort feels like willing. But we get misled if we think all voluntary action is like that. Writing a letter, saying hello. Often no effort, no deliberation.
True.
And observing yourself voluntarily raise your arm is different from seeing it twitch involuntarily. But there isn't one consistent difference, like the presence-absence of a specific volition signal. Often it's that you just can't take an observant attitude towards your own voluntary action in the same way. You just do it.
We don't watch ourselves decide.
Exactly. We're tempted to think the real action is further back, like volition playing a keyboard of muscles. That's just a misleading picture. Knowing what you're going to do can be simple, like looking at the thing you're about to point to, not some hidden inner command signal.
So we generalize from the effortful cases. What about involuntary speech? Exclamations like, ouch, or help. They feel unwilled.
Good examples. They lack that preparatory act of volition. You don't decide to yell, ouch! But then again, lots of voluntary speech isn't consciously premeditated either. Crying out against your will is like being surprised. There isn't a sharp line between these spontaneous expressions and deliberate communication. It's all part of the language game.
Okay, let's turn to understanding and belief. If I ask you, do you understand the word epistemology? And you say yes or no, what actually happens in your mind at that moment? Is there an understanding experience?
If you try to catch it, you'll likely find, again, a multitude of different characteristic experiences, but no single one that is the experience of understanding. Sometimes maybe a feeling of, oh yeah, of course. Sometimes vague memories flash by. Sometimes you just hear the word and answer automatically.
That homely feeling of understanding we get when thinking about it isn't always there in practice.
Often not. Understanding a word isn't just about what happens while you hear it. It's about the whole environment of that event. Can you use it correctly? Explain it. React appropriately. Speaking with understanding isn't about a constant inner hum of comprehension. It's about the context, the surrounding circumstances, your ability.
Right. And you mentioned the word particular can be tricky here.
Hugely tricky. It creates a delusion because it has two uses. Transitive leads to a specification. This soap has a particular smell. That's the one from my childhood. You specify which smell.
Okay.
And intransitive, just emphasis. This soap smells most particular. You're just emphasizing its strangeness. When we philosophize and say red comes in a particular way, we usually mean it intransitively.
Yeah.
We're staring at the sensation, emphasizing it, not comparing it to another specifiable way.
And saying, I said I was sick of it and I meant it.
That's the intransitive use of mean. You're not offering a translation. By sick of it, I mean XYZ. You're emphasizing your sincerity, maybe retracing your feeling. The philosophical mistake is treating I mean what I say as if meaning it is a hidden internal act accompanying the words. I mean what I mean often just signals. That's it. No further explanation.
That's so insightful. Language tricks us into looking for hidden objects. Okay, final area, perception. When you see a simple drawing, like a smiley face, you don't just see lines, right? You see a face with an expression.
Right. You see joy or sadness, but you don't mean it has an outstanding expression usually, nor are you analyzing every curve. The illusion is feeling the expression is somehow detachable from the drawing, like a separate thing in the face.
But it's not.
Wittgenstein argues no. We're not matching the lines to some pre-existing template of joy. We're sounding the thing with our attention, letting the picture sink into our mind and make a mold there. When you suddenly see the face in a puzzle picture, now I see it, you're seeing it as a face. It's a shift in aspect, a reorganization of what you see. Like seeing a Necker cube flip, or seeing dots as pairs. You're not comparing it to an external model. The organization changes. When we cut a seal after the impression, we create the prototype. We don't find one that was already there.
A shift in aspect, and this is like understanding a sentence.
He suggests it's remarkably similar. We think understanding a sentence means grabbing some external content or reality it points to. But maybe understanding is more like understanding a musical theme. You don't grasp some meaning outside the music. You get hold of its content, which is in the theme itself and the notes and their relations. The meaning is how the sentence works, its internal structure, its role in the game.
Wow. So this really challenges the idea of purely private meaning, doesn't it? Can we ever truly communicate a feeling directly, mind to mind?
We're inclined to think that when we communicate a feeling, something which we can never know happens at the other end. All we ever get back is another expression, words, a look, an action. It's like that physics experiment measuring light speed. You only measure the round trip, not the exact moment it hits the mirror. There's no way to verify a direct transmission by passing the external signs.
So the meaning stays public in the expressions, the actions.
Yes, that mysterious relation between a name and the object isn't some mystical link. It's as simple as a scribble being written on an object. Its importance is entirely in its use. Naming involves knowing how that sound or mark is used in this particular game. The entire usage defines the relation, which means there are as many relations as there are uses. The mystery dissolves when we stop looking for a hidden essence and just look at the practice. Hashtag tag outro.
Wow. Okay, so we've really journeyed through these language games. We've seen how simple things like naming, counting, understanding, they're all deeply tied to practice, to context, not just to what's going on in our heads, and concepts like ability or understanding or familiarity. They aren't defined by one hidden thing, but by this complex web, this family resemblance of overlapping uses and behaviors.
Exactly, and how the very structure of our language can sometimes set traps for us, making us search for hidden causes or meanings that might not even be there.
Right.
This whole deep dive really suggests that a lot of philosophical puzzles, and maybe even everyday misunderstandings, don't come from reality being inherently mysterious, but from the often misleading grammar of our own language.
We keep looking for the thing behind the word.
Yet we're constantly tempted to look for hidden things or causes, when often the thing is just the use of the word itself, and the cause is a whole complex tapestry of circumstances and habits. Maybe the biggest takeaway is that we don't always need to look behind language for its meaning. We just need to look much more carefully at how we actually play the language game.
So a final thought for everyone listening.
What might you discover about your own assumptions? About how you talk, how you understand others, even how you understand yourself? If you just paused sometimes and observed how you really use the words you think with every single day, what games are you playing?